The thinker. This overlaps with the counterbalance identity. However, the thinker is an engineer of thought, an engineer of structures, and the thinker has a couple of different purposes. I'd say one is, the phenomena of respect. So in a chauvinistic culture, thinking is ranked high relative to feeling. Now, in fact, they are equal and interdependent. You don't have thoughts without feelings, and you don't have feelings without thoughts. They are a marriage of sort. However, in a chauvinistic American cult, the comment is, what do you think about this? Not what do you feel about it? And even when you say what I feel about this is, it's a thought, or they get confused. And feelings are deprioritized. Thoughts are prioritized. Oh, that's an interesting thought. And so, one focus is attention. Wherever the cult dwells, if you want to be in the limelight in some way, you have to move into that domain. So that's one area. And I would say another drive for this was thoughts did not upset my father the way feelings did. Nor did they upset my mother as much. So there's an accommodation of parents that are uncomfortable with intense feelings. And I think another draw is the more insane, and insanity is simply a continuum of dissociation. At the point where the dissociation is so great that you can make little or no connection between one thing and the other, one could call that insanity. If someone is talking and there is so little association between what they're saying and what's going on around them or what they're doing, that's one way we detect insanity is high dissociation. And we can detect the insanity of Western cult by analyzing the extent to which we undermine our own ecological environment. Because to stand on an island and cut away the resources that support that island is insane. To fly on a hot air balloon and start cutting away the strings that are helping us fly is insane. And there are so many aspects of Western cult that directly destroy that which we depend on as individuals and as a cult. And so that is dissociation. If this hand starts hacking away and cutting this hand off because it doesn't understand that if this hand bleeds to death, then there's less blood for it. And if the body dies, it dies with the body. That's an ignorant hand. Well, luckily, nerves connect the two hands together, and so this hand might start off ignorant, but by the time it's taken a few chops, it says, we're connected. I don't like the way that feels, and so we stop. But we've dissociated from our larger ecology, the trees, etc., and so we're not stopping, we're numb. And so you have, insanity there. And so, looking at the level of insanity in my parents and cult, it was frightening. It's frightening for a parent to laugh when you're in pain and then say, I love you. That's frightening because it's insane. The level of insanity around me, the level of out of control, unattuned energy, I think, was painful and is painful enough that I have a drive towards unusually coherent sanity in other areas of my life. So ideas, if they're explored honestly, can have an unusual degree of integrity and sanity. Ideas. Objects. The thing I love about objects is they behave consistently. So unlike an addictive parent who says this, then does this, and behaves this way one day and this way the other day, and then denies that there's any difference, creating, just a mind-bogglingly complex and unsatisfying equation in a child's mind, can be replaced with an object that does exactly what that object does all the time and makes no effort to conceal it. And so suddenly there's this great peace and comfort that the object will not lie to me and in that way will not betray me. And so thoughts in that way are objects. And they're also, along with my own objects, something that I can regulate and control. So in search of control, in search of regulation, in search of mattering, of existing, in search of rank, in search of sanity, objects and ideas and observation is there. And so this gives rise then to the philosopher. So the constructor of narrative and story to represent what's happening. The thinker. And I appreciate, I feel a gratitude to my thoughts for, giving all of those different types of things. Now, I also, I would say another drive of mine is sympathy with the underdog, be that the underdog of thought, the underdog of a habit, or the underdog of a person. Because if you're moving towards symmetry, if you understand that the sphere is the most efficient shape in geometry, that if you want to transport a very heavy object efficiently, you want wheels. And the reason you want wheels is that we make them round. You want round wheels. You don't want triangular wheels. It will be bumpy, expensive in energy if you drive in triangular wheels. We want round wheels. And the reason we want round wheels is they're more graceful. And the grace comes from the conservation of energy. By conserving volatility, by symmetry, we get a tremendous amount of grace. And the sphere is symmetrical on all sides, which makes it the most elegant shape. And it's also the unifying shape of the yin and the yang, because to construct a sphere, you can make an infinite number of planes or lines, or an infinite number of dots, and in that way you have infinity. But you also have one. The sphere is infinite and it is one in the same moment. It is the most energy efficient shape, and thus the most intelligent shape. And we have a lot of spheres because life is intelligent. So in this dynamic, when you have an underdog and an overdog, you have asymmetry. When you have a giant and a child, you have asymmetry. And so the grace and the intelligence is restored to the equation by toning down the big one and increasing the small one. So the underdog is always the small one. And so as the underdog moves towards parity, towards balance with its opponent, with its partner, you move towards grace. And it's that phenomena of, if it's undervalued, if it's not seen, if it's invisible, if it's bullied, if no one's paying attention to it, then that's a good, intelligent place to pay attention. And so, we have, thoughts allow the leverage, the basis for those arguments. Because you can build a mental foundation against or under anything. You can support just about anything. And so, in order to support an underdog, you have to build a support under it that supports it. And, thinking is one of the technologies to do that with. And another driver in thought is, as a sensitive, I like to avoid shock. Shock is traumatic to a sensitive, and so I like to avoid it. And in order to avoid it, I have to build models of reality, but not just any models of reality that allow me to predict the future. And predict the future effectively enough to minimize shock. And so, in that sense, there is there is a process of seeing what's going to happen through the model, preparing for it, and avoiding shock. There's also the process of empowering other people to act intelligently. Intelligently is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into sustainable well-being. And you need a model of reality in order to predict what is and is not intelligent. And so, towards that end, we need such a model, and thinking allows me to develop such a model. So thinking is also a way to solve people's problems, to help them, to see them get happier. And this is a great drive in kind of the adult motivation for thinking. And so in thinking about something and looking at a model, it has to make sense from all the various perspectives. And it has to have a certain amount of integrity. It has to be resilient enough not to collapse in the face of other models, to be able to hold its own. And benefit has to occur. When benefit does not occur, thinking becomes irrelevant. But these are some of the ecological variables that give rise to the thinker, and the development of thinking takes place. For example, I do thought development through these videos because you have to develop an architecture to present something to the actual or fictional audience. I also do it through writing. Again, you have to put things into words because all thought is through language. You cannot think a single thought without words, which also means you cannot say a single sentence without thinking a thought. And so the development of thought is based on the development of language. And the development of language happens through speaking and listening, through dialogue. Sympathy, antipathy, synthesis. Sympathy, antipathy, synthesis of a thought expressed and held in language. And the iteration process of the thought held in language is moving towards intelligence, towards the efficiency with which energy is transformed into sustainable well-being. And it's incredibly graceful to do that at the level of thought. So, welcome the thinker.